everybody. So it's 10:18. We're we're starting at our self-imposed deadline. It's really nice to see this room so full of people here to talk about one of the most exciting topics at CES this year, the connected home, the smart home, all of this riding on the back of the Internet of Things, which if there ever were a buzzword at CES, that's it. I'm Lindsey Turrentine. I'm the editor-in-chief of CNET.com, and I'm here with a really, truly fantastic panel of people who have been spending all their time thinking about the very exciting questions we're going to talk about today. So I'm going to introduce them by going down this line and having each of you say just a few words about what you do and what your company does in regards to the connected home. And we're going to start with Ben Kaufman right here to my left. He's the founder and CEO of Quirky, which I'm sure you've heard of. Hi, Ben.
Hi. How are you?
I'm great.
Okay. Well, Quirky is an invention platform. We started out making all sorts of stuff like core management products and power strips that are much better than this one. And what we heard from our community, we get about 4,000 product ideas a week. And early 2013, about 17% of our community submissions were for connected home products. And we entered into a partnership with GE to build some great stuff. And out of that came a platform called Wink. And here I am, right here, right now.
We're so glad you're here. Arthur Orduña is here with ADT. He's an SVP and Chief Innovation Officer. Hello. Can you tell us a little bit about ADT and why you care about the smart home?
Well, ADT, I think everybody recognizes the brand. We're the leading home security and commercial security provider, but what some people may not know is that we actually pioneered the integration of home security and home automation about 4 years ago in our Pulse product. So while we have about 7 million customers in North America, we have more than 1 million customers who actually have our Pulse platform, which marries home security and home integration. So I'm excited to be on this panel. All the guys who are on here and ladies who are on here represent, from an ADT perspective, the companies that are really driving at different facets of IoT and companies who we view as, as really intrinsic and something that we could support with our platform. So.
Great.
You nailed that.
Yeah,
That was good.
Thank you, Ben.
Alex Hawkinson, founder and CEO of SmartThings, now part of Samsung. Welcome. It's been a big show for you.
I am here as well.
Yes, you are here. Can you tell us a little bit more about SmartThings and what the mission of SmartThings is?
Yeah, so two facets. We're trying to make the easiest way for everyday people to turn their home into a smart home. And then I guess that's distinctive is we're trying to be a very open platform on the back end. So we have a totally open platform to both developers and device makers. And on both fronts, been accelerating. We were acquired by Samsung in August, though we're keeping SmartThings independent, but Samsung makes a few connected things around the world. I think BK said the other night 665 million physical products per year, and we're integrating those all with SmartThings now. So lots of things to say.
It's exciting times. Amanda Perilli, she's the Director of Strategic Business Development for the Home Depot, and I know has been thinking a lot about how the Home Depot talks about the smart home.
Yeah, so I think everyone knows the Home Depot, or hopefully knows the Home Depot. So we sell a lot of product. We want to be a destination for customers to trust us for home automation and trust our product offering for home automation. And so my job is to think about our strategy, our go-to-market strategy, how that looks in the store, how we train our associates in the store, what products we pick, and how we do our online presence, kind of all of the things, the facets that come together for our go-to-market strategy for home automation.
Thank you. And next to Amanda, we have Lyndon Tibbetts, who's the CEO of IFTTT, which I think might be, in some ways, the coolest and also hardest to explain product here on the panel. So why don't you take a shot at that, Lyndon?
Sure. Lyndon Tibbetts, CEO of IFT. We pronounce it IFT. We, of course, put 3 T's in the name, so it's okay. It's called IFTTT as well. We're flexible. What we help people do is create simple connections between the services and devices they use every day. Those connections are called recipes. And they really follow this format right now of if something happens, then do something else. So some simple examples would be If it's going to rain tomorrow, then send me a text message today that tells me. So let me know to wear my raincoat to work. I think some of the most exciting connections we're making now, I think are IoT or smart home based. So simple things like using your Job on Up or Fitbit. If you get 8 hours of sleep, say, turn on the lights in your bedroom. So we really allow people to be creative with the services and products that they're surrounding themselves with, and increasingly those products are smart home products.
Great, thank you. And of course, at the end, we have my friend and colleague, Rich Brown, who's an executive editor for CNET and runs our smart home team in Louisville, Kentucky. Rich, why don't you tell everybody a little bit about what we're doing there?
Sure. So about 18 months ago, I moved out to Louisville, and we got our hands on a warehouse out there. So with a team of editors, and we're kind of testing and reviewing all the stuff these guys want to sell you, all sort of related to the smart home and connected appliances in particular.
It's a pretty exciting project. Yeah, these guys all have to be very nice now.
I'm gonna be bad at this.
All right, so my very first question here, and let me go back to the same panel last year. At the same panel last year, we had Matt Rogers here from Nest. He seemed super relaxed and very happy. And it was probably because it was like 5 minutes before Google acquired Nest, and he knew exactly what was going to happen. He said at the time, look, I think it's going to be generously 5 years, probably more, until the connected home is really a thing that most people can grasp and understand. I think that 1 year later, and seeing the announcements that we've seen here at CES, some of the really compelling integrations between Nest and other products, but also with all of the people you see here, I don't personally think it's going to be that far off. I think that most people have some level of automation. They're familiar with the idea of automation. These stories are out there. However, we do still see a little bit, especially on the CNET side, when we talk to our readers, we hear readers say, I don't really know why I need a smart lock, for instance, even though they probably have something like it on their car already. So my first question for the panel, and I think I'll start with you, Ben, is just because you're here.
Okay.
And your coffee looks good.
Yeah.
Is how do you communicate with an audience what the promise of this smart home is? What's the storytelling tactic that you use to say, this really is going to make your life smoother and easier and more interesting?
Yeah, I think this is the biggest problem we have right now is we have a lot of great products now. You go downstairs, you see a lot of great stuff. And we have to do the hard work of educating the world and what this is and how it works. The favorite thing we've done, just to be a little bit, talk about myself, is we went down to Boca Raton, Florida. That's where you live, right? You look young for living down there.
Thank you.
We went down to Boca Raton, Florida, and we found an 85-year-old couple, and they had Wink, and they were using it. And we filmed them, we made a little documentary around how they were using this stuff, and we called them stories, and we went out across the country, found all sorts of different people, all sorts of different walks of life, and we talked to them about how they're using smart home stuff, because everyone's using it differently. Max and Irv, as they would be called down there, they use smart home because they complain and fight with each other around the temperature of the home. So Irv likes it hot, Max likes it cold, and she likes the fact that she can override his suggestions at any given time. And any one of these little stories, everyone has a little reason why they want to have smart home, I think will compel people to start. And then once they start, they'll get more and more stuff, and we'll go from there.
Thank you. Alex, I'm going to ask you the same question, partially because I just saw the great SmartThings demo over in the Samsung booth, and one of the parts of that demo that I found most compelling was the integration of a camera, a front door camera, with the television. Can you tell us a little bit more about that and any other use cases that you think are particularly powerful in translating for people why this matters?
Yeah, I mean, I think I'd agree with what Ben was getting into, which is just that it is about the stories. It's got to be, the human needs. And one thing that I think is a challenge is that we see smart home, it's almost more like home decorating than it's like one product. I mean, all of us have very distinctive tastes and styles and how we want it to work and so on, but there are common threads. And so I think our job is to identify those common threads. So they tend to be like peace of mind. You're worried about something and you can keep an eye on it. You know, energy savings is interesting. All sorts of little conveniences, connected health and entertainment. But we're trying to showcase some of those examples. So like the one you're mentioning, peace of mind, it might be, you know, you're watching TV and there's somebody at your front door, and in a little picture-in-picture window on the TV, it just shows you that there's somebody at the front door and who they are, and you could unlock it from there or whatever. But it could be the baby monitor popping up that way as well. And the same thing would happen if you're outside of the home and so on. But that's just that sense of, you know, is there somebody at the front door? Should I let them in? That's just a very simple thing that people can identify with. And there's literally sort of hundreds more of those stories, and I think we have to get those out there and tell them relentlessly. And we'll get to open standards, I think, in a second. But as we all keep into those, it's going to help each other.
Can I jump on that?
Of
Just
course.
a little bit, because I think Alex is absolutely right about the peace of mind approach of it. Our take on it is a little different, a different angle of attack, right? Because we sell security, which at the core of it is peace of mind. But we're finding that, you know, more than 2/3 of our new customers on a weekly basis are opting for Pulse, which is with home automation as well. So our take on it is, it's not just the smart home, which all of these guys, all these people represent, and I think represent really well. It's also a smart, safe home. So for example, we have a relationship that we announced with IFT, and Lyndon was talking about the recipes. And the recipes are really cool in terms of those kinds of conveniences, but we're utilizing some of those same connections to actually leverage leverage safety and security, right? So for example, a programmable light bulb, which is cool in and of itself.
Yeah,
right?
it is.
It is, and you've got some, dude. You really do. But imagine if it's tied into safety and security, and for an alert, along with sending something to our monitoring centers, you also have the programmable light bulb actually changing colors and flashing. So it adds another layer of security, and imagine if you have hearing impaired in that household as well. So what all of these devices and services represent, we think through the vision of safety and security, gives even more reason for folks in homes to start buying into the Internet of Things.
So you mentioned Lyndon and IFT, and I have a specific question for you. What's the most interesting recipe you've seen, or your favorite?
That's a good question. I think for me, as I think about some of the stories I tell, especially around the smart home that I do, one of those is with the connected light. So I am constantly tying up favorite sports teams when they're in season, using ESPN as those games start, turning the lights to that color. So orange for the San Francisco Giants, blue now for the Cowboys. I'm originally from Texas. So another interesting story that I thought was really fun. I have a little bit of a goal in terms of holiday weight loss. Not a big problem for me, but still something I'm setting some goals for. I've got a withing scale. And so anytime I go over a set threshold, I send a message via email. My girlfriend, a little kind of keep you honest. And I think what some of those stories, and those are just some of the things I'm doing, I think what's so interesting, and to Ben's point and Alex's point, it's just different for everyone. Everyone has this like different either entry point or different things they get excited about. And recognizing that there has to be this level of intuition, or this level of expectations being known and then being met by the devices in a home before someone can actually take control of those and organize and be creative with those. And I think that's something, not only are the stories and the value important, but also that barrier, meeting those expectations. Anyone who's had something in their home that didn't quite work as expected and had a spouse or another family member get frustrated with that can certainly relate. And so I think that's another way that we'll really start to get out to a larger market.
Yeah, and just really quickly, I want to ask Amanda, because you interface with the customer, what is the Home Depot hearing from its customers? What are they interested in? Is this concept in the forefront of their minds yet, or are they still kind of dancing around the edges?
Yeah, I mean, so as a team, our merchandising department, we go out into our stores, on a weekly basis. We do training, we visit different regions in the country, and we meet with our associates and we meet with the customers in our store on a regular basis. And it's interesting, we were in Detroit, I think, a month ago or so, and we're going through and we're doing training on home automation, doing demos, and kind of really trying to get that very tactical, these are some use cases that you can grasp and see. You can see the door lock work, you can see the light bulb go off, you can actually see these products work. And all of a sudden you see these associates go, oh my gosh, my snowbird customers would love that. The people that are in Florida and have a home here, they would love to be able to see what's going on in their home here, or be able to turn on the light here while they're away. And you see this aha moment for them, and it makes it so exciting because then I know that they're going to evangelize this for their customers as the customers come in the door. And so that's the kind of thing that we really try to hit on, is find a use case or something that speaks to you. If you're a working mom and you want to use the door lock for your kids because they're home, or an hour earlier, right? If that's something that really resonates with you, have that use case, you can talk to your customers that way. And that's really where it becomes more personal and it becomes more effective, I think, when they're actually talking one-on-one with the different customers that walk in our door.
That makes sense. Alex?
I was just going to ask, in the audience, how many of you are either making or selling smart home products, as you would classify it? So a handful, but at any rate, what's interesting too is that once you get that initial hook, somebody starts for one of these reasons, it's also the ongoing storytelling as well. Something we found is sort of our average household starts with 3 or 4 things along with their hub when they get going. And that might be for security or peace of mind, or it might be lighting, or it might be climate. But then if you can create an experience through that journey, their mindset really changes. They have that initial, I call it inception, if you like that movie. I love that movie. It's the inception moment is that first story, but then they begin to think of the world as sort of hyper-connected, and then they get more creative, right? So our average household has more than 10 devices after a month. And I think it's in all of this, that is, as those percolate, those people tell the stories to each other and so on as well. So it's the ongoing storytelling and discovery.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's really a big deal.
One of those things where, none of us really had a smartphone in 2006 or 7, right? It's now, I think once you have it, you're like, how did I not have it, right?
Yeah.
And so as people get in, it's once they have the access to, remotely control their thermostat or lights or whatever, it becomes a snowball effect, and how could you live without it?
Absolutely. And Rich, you sit at the intersection of our coverage and the readers, and you look at the feedback every single day. What are the biggest sticking points for those readers? What are the things that make them kind of raise their eyebrow or say, I'm not sure I'm ready yet?
I think I think what the concern might be eventually, anyway, is that when you buy, there are a lot of locks out there, a lot of connected light bulbs, there's a lot of competition in this space. That means that the good stuff is really pretty good. It's kind of come up through the ringer, I guess, and stands out. The things I think people like the best are the things that are most open. So if I buy a lock, if I'm going to get into the smart home, it's because there's one product out there that resonates with me that I'm excited for. It's a smart lock, it's a smart thermostat, whatever. Then if I want to buy something else and I find out that next product won't talk to the other one, all of a sudden that's really annoying. So it can be a totally open, so the products I think people get very excited about, at least in our office, are things either like SmartThings with Alex's platform, where it is a totally open API. You can get in there and hack. SmartThings may make their own formal relationships. Wink, you guys do a good job of this also, as far as establishing those formal relationships with the most popular products out there. There's some other companies that do a very good job of that. Also, Chamberlain is another one. They support pretty much every smart home platform out there. There are some that are not as open, and I'm not sure what it'll be interesting to see how much negative feedback they get from people when they start to expand their smart home.
So that was, for me, the perfect transition to the next question that I was going to ask.
You guys must work together.
Yeah, that was amazing. Open versus closed. I have a feeling that I know the answer from most people on this panel, but I'd love to hear from some of you on the advantages to keeping an ecosystem open and some of the challenges around that, and whether or not there's the potential for a closed ecosystem. And to be clear, what we're talking about here is products from the same vendor that only work with other products from the same vendor. or not. I mean, Rich, you mentioned that SmartThings and the Quirky platform are both open platforms, and I'd love to hear from both of you about what the advantages there are. And Alex, let's start with you.
It's a really big deal. You know, I think it's going to hold back the whole industry as well if we're not on top of this. I mean, I think that, and I'd like to draw a distinction of what we mean by open in terms of sort of litmus tests, because it's easy to say the word as well. And sort of in the opening keynote that I was part of the other night, we made this promise, which surprised a lot of people across Samsung as an example, is that it means that it's about consumer freedom, and it's also about developer, I think, freedom as well. You know, we are not going to make all the products that sit in a given home, and we shouldn't also be, presumptuous to think that we're going to make the intelligence layer that is going to work for everybody. And so I think the litmus test is things like, you can say it's open and that, oh, we invite everybody else into the walled garden. That's not what we mean. What we mean is, of course, we're going to try to make this super easy, but it means that at the physical layer, our products that we happen to manufacture should be able to work in somebody else's app as well as they can work in our app. It also means our app should favor, not favor the products that we happen to make. So if you like our air conditioner unit, awesome. But if you don't, it should be equally great to have somebody else. And then I think finally, like the developer ecosystem, enabling people to be free. So a lot of the behind-the-scenes walled gardens, what's going on is these battles that nobody sees, which are like, you can only keep the data for 3 days, or you can't build apps of this or that nature. And it's actually the breakdowns. So if you look at our roadmap, I think we have the best, the biggest sort of current ecosystem of more than 150 products that are out there. The ones that are conspicuously not on the list yet are basically breakdowns. They're not technical. They're breakdowns because of those philosophies right on, and not really having the consumer in mind in terms of freedom long term. Last thing is, like, I think if we foster a truly open approach, it'll remove fear from consumers. It'll result in more innovation, and then the best products, there's so much opportunity for so many winners here that all boats will rise, versus the closed approach.
You care to name any of those products that don't work in your ecosystem?
Nest.
I didn't say it, but there's examples of products we physically love, but again are breaking down based on a philosophical approach that we don't think is right for consumers.
But Ben, you have anything to add there?
Yeah, I mean, I wear two hats, right? So on the Quirky side, we're making connected hardware with and for General Electric. And then on the Wink side, we're obviously fostering a platform that we also hope to be open. To speak about the hardware a little bit, every single piece of hardware that we will put the GE logo on or the Quirky logo on will be absolutely open. Every product we've made to date is open. Many Quirky GE products work on SmartThings. If you buy a GE Link bulb at the Home Depot, you can use basically any smart home platform with it. And every product we make will continue to be open. So that's how we feel on the hardware side. On the app side and on the ecosystem side, we have basically two philosophies. Number one is, if you do have a great product and it is open, we will connect it into the platform and make it all work. The second is that we want to make sure that the experience inside of the platform itself is a good one and it works and so on. So we do hold partners' hands a little bit to make sure that even if they do have open APIs, the way it's all integrated is going to work in a way where consumers are going to get it and be able to adopt it really quickly. So that's sort of on both sides of things how we're approaching it. But I don't think you'll find any disagreement from anyone with a sane head that doesn't have billions of dollars in the bank that open is good.
There's two other points for a litmus test, because I completely agree with where Wink and where SmartThings are in terms of openness. But we're looking at it from a services platform perspective, right? And so the devices that both Alex and Ben are manufacturing, we want that to be part of a Pulse environment. But it's not just the interoperability at that device layer. There's two others, right? One is the actual user experience itself, right? And you need to be able to give the consumer, ultimately that customer, the right to say, I want this user experience, I'm the most comfortable with it, and I'll use that as a launching pad. It doesn't necessarily mean that you won't be able to bring in, say, the best of some elements from what Ben's got on Wink or what Alex has on SmartThings. But if, for example, you're coming at it from the perspective of another user experience, you've got to accede to that, right? There has to be that level of cooperation. And the second one is what Alex touched on too, which is the issue of data, right? And the ability to actually safely share accepted forms of data for the benefit of that customer. And the best example of that is for automations, right? So I think that to be able to say, oh, we need from these multiple devices that may be coming from different manufacturers and may actually have different platforms on the back end, but you want one seamless, really cool experience for that home, right? So that requires ultimately sharing, and not just at the metadata level, but you could start there, right? But that requires some kind of protected and secure sharing so that you can have those kinds of automations of turning off the lights at a particular time or disarming the panel at a particular time or allowing these recipes to happen.
Yep.
Right?
Yeah, absolutely.
One of the things I think is emerging very quickly here is even there's sort of this unofficial, like almost organic openness that seems to be happening where, so SmartThings, I don't think you guys have official support for the Nest, for it works with the Nest program, right? But
It's integrated by the developer community, yeah.
Yeah.
But it's not official,
Right.
exactly. Yeah.
But Chamberlain has that, and you guys work with Chamberlain. So kind of through that circuitous path, and IFT facilitates this also between
Yeah.
platforms. I mean, I think there is, for the power user anyway, now, especially that's important, I think, there's this interesting workaround that is kind of, it can be fun to play with, I think.
It is, and I think it's, I mean, obviously consumers first in every single possible case. And so, I wasn't picking on Nest particularly. There's a lot of examples of this, and we will support official integration there and love the products and otherwise. But I think that it's this litmus test and these deeper layers, right, that I'm hopeful that I see the tide moving in that direction, and I think it will only be good. As an example, so our developer community, which has always been pretty robust, it's more than doubled in the past 4 months in terms of not just the number of developers, but the actual productivity. So it's thousands of new devices a month, it's thousands of these apps. It doesn't mean those are all published to consumers, but there is a lot of activity, and we're hopeful that if we put our full shoulder into this now with sort of the marketing budgets that we're all starting to gain, that we can make that tide, fall all the way over. Which I think will be even to the benefit of the currently walled up ones.
So you mentioned developers developing apps that work on these ecosystems and platforms, and this leads me to my next set of questions, which is, I guess is the app, a single app, the enemy of the smart home? Because we know that despite the fact that we all walk around with small computers that we're very familiar with that can act essentially as a command center for what our home is doing, it's daunting to think that you have a different app for your light bulb than you do for your thermostat, than you do for your security system. And so in this way, Apple HomeKit and that integration platform and that layer is sort of looming over this entire conversation. And I'd love to get your thoughts on where that's going. I mean, we know that there were a lot of HomeKit compatible products just announced at the show this week, so that's coming. I think consumers have no idea what HomeKit is really, and it's not an app, it's just a layer. But when Rich first showed me that if you ask Siri, hey Siri, open my front door, it answers and says, oh, you don't have anything set up yet, but once you do, things are gonna be awesome, basically. Really try it, it's pretty funny. It's out there waiting, and how much time do you guys spend thinking about this? I mean, Lyndon, start with you.
Sure, yeah. I think for me, it's first really recognizing, one, that I think there's this common misconception that an app for everything is actually bad. And I think if we, and it really is tied closely to openness, is if we do have openness, we actually have a programmable layer, and you can maybe have 4 apps for everything, right? And the best things rise to the top. But I think, and getting a little bit to HomeKit, so it's really, really early. And I think one of the big questions any developer should be asking themselves is really what comes after the app, right? How do you as a developer maintain a relationship as a brand and as a company with a consumer as interfaces are changing. I think it's really clear. You mentioned Siri, and I think there's just so many other potential next interfaces, whether those are smaller
Yeah.
watches, they're gesture-based, they're things that are totally detached from any one device. And so I think it's that relationship that people should be thinking really deeply about. And how do you maintain that relationship with your customer without this little icon on a grid of other icons,
Yeah,
right?
absolutely.
That's so taken for granted now. That's just so obvious. There's no smartphone without that. What's that next way to think about it?
I would agree with everything. I mean, Lyndon just said it. It's really early days on the interface front. I mean, I don't know the answer either. But there's definitely places where, like take social networking, you do a lot in the Facebook app, but not everything necessarily, but a lot. And I don't think you'd want like a separate app for each friend connection you have or something like that.
But you
right?
definitely do want a separate app for messaging. It makes it so much easier.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I
you
love the
don't.
forced install there, but
Definitely better that way.
But on the other hand, we're showing in the booth, you say I'm ready to go to work, and the BMW pulls up, and that's a real integration through SmartThings right now, and it's totally ambient. We have beacon support, so as you walk around with the phone in the pocket, just the micro presence of you at the time of day around your thing. So when I open my chemical cabinet at home, it's fine, but when my toddler opens it, I get a notification. And all these sort of distinctions that are not in the app, are just sort of this ambient intelligence. Who knows? I mean, honestly, it's just a very rapidly evolving space, and I think everybody has to think about it. How do you maintain the relationship with the consumer and so on? But it's very early days on this front.
Amanda, do your consumers expect integration with specific platforms? Are they open to anything?
No, I mean, our consumers expect to buy something and it work on whatever they have, right?
Just works,
And so
yeah.
and it just works, right? So they don't want to come in, and we don't want them to come in and not buy, the garage door opener because it doesn't work on whatever system they have. I want them to buy whatever they want to buy, right? So it's definitely pro-consumer to be open, and it helps with adoption, and it is much better from a consumer base. And honestly, I think when we talked, a little bit earlier about the potential and the risk on disillusionment with the customers, I think that is a real risk that consumers come in and they buy something and it doesn't work with their past device or it's not retrofitted. It becomes a really bad customer experience for them, and they don't necessarily want to come back, or they want to wait, right? And they're like, oh, well, I'll wait till you guys have figured this all out. And so that is the risk to kind of not being as open. And so ones that when we pick products and when we look at products and systems, we really try to find products that are open and systems that are open so we can just sell more product. And I think we're a little early too on the wearables. Like you're at CES and it's so exciting and all the gesture stuff and everything is great. I think from a mass standpoint, when we're like at Home Depot in the store, it's just we're not there yet, right? So I get excited about it and where we could be. Like if you fast forward, 12 months or whatever that timeline is. But the average consumer coming in just wants their garage door opener and maybe with a little bit better functionality, right? And something that gives me something just better than what I have today, right?
So if you told them, and this is a question that I'm going to kind of bridge between you and Arthur, but if you told them that, say, they could buy a door lock that would work by recognizing your face right now, and you just install the door lock, would they respond to that, or do you think that's still a little bit too out there, too
No,
science
I
fiction?
think if there's value in products and the customers really understand like feature and functionality and value in products, and what a great value that could be, right? With that facial recognition, and we saw lots of cameras with facial recognition and all of that on the floor. I think that does speak, if customers understand new features and new functionality. So I do think that gets people to the next level.
Right, absolutely.
Because I think it's, and thanks for that, because that was actually what the Intel CEO showed last night at his keynote demo, was an integration between TrueKey, which is Intel's new multi-factor authentication platform, and Pulse, and using facial recognition off of their RealSense 3D camera embedded in a door, because everybody has that in their front door at this point, to be able to disarm their Pulse system and to open their Z-Wave door lock. That's great. It's a proof of concept. What's important about it, though, I think to to a Home Depot customer is, does it actually have value and is it affordable, right, at this point? And I think from an affordability perspective, we're a bit a ways away, but it's not incredibly far away. And the other
things could be cheaper.
yeah,
I've
it should be
heard that.
cheaper.
Yeah.
It should be cheaper.
From that guy.
And also, from what everybody's saying here, it's not the app, right? It's the experience. There will be multiple apps. Alex is absolutely right. There will always be multiple apps from a control perspective on this. But how do you make it brainless, absolutely frictionless, when they bring that thing home, or when it is delivered at their doorstep, and how it actually gets attached, right? And there's a framework that we're talking about here, not necessarily just Linden's, but there's a framework out there that is also part of, that is going to require this kind of openness on the not just on an individual developer's perspective, but as a community. I mean, I think that what we ought to be working on together too is identifying those kinds of problems, as Alex is saying, those kinds of obstacles that are impeding us from actual mass adoption, right? And then together, there's a lot of bright folks now in this industry attacking those, such as this kind of seamless interaction at the user experience. It can be solved, right? But you've got to kind of set some of your own ego aside to solve it.
I think the app and interface stuff is incredibly interesting. Like, I don't even know that there will be an app that you need to pull your phone out of your pocket for to open your locks. Like, I think it's all of our goals to just walk up to your door and it opens, and you're ready to go to sleep. Like, everything just goes off and locks. Like, that's.
You've been talking to Narain.
Huh?
I said you've been talking to my CEO.
I haven't.
Exactly what he wants.
Oh, okay. He's into magic too?
Yes.
Okay. Well, that honestly, like that's where we think it's going to ultimately end up. Is like these apps are what we can do today to make everything smart and easy to use. But ultimately, we just want it all to work and be magical.
Yeah,
Well,
absolutely.
just one thing, it's drawing together a point that Lyndon made earlier, which is fun, is that I will say, and the sort of complexity is that you can get too cute too fast, right? People generally just want stuff that works. And if you put too much of the machine learning or whatever is in the background and you wake up too cold in the morning or whatever, that really pisses people off. And so what we see is simple things that work
Is that
elegantly.
a bang on Nest too?
No, it's not. But
Man, you're on a roll.
No, that was
okay.
another thermostat. No, but simple works elegantly and well, even with some of that magic. And then what's interesting is that mental shift. It's after you've had things for like a month, then you begin to play, right? So, recipe that automatically like looks at your previous Google searches and makes the lights flash for you out of the box, creepy, right? But awesome if you do it yourself, right? Which I've done for the Vikings too.
Yeah,
It's like,
yeah.
all right.
Yeah, and there's a learning
So
curve. And that's,
you add it as you go, right? And it's like that home decorating. It's got to be your taste. It's not one size fits all, and you can really misfire
Yeah.
on that front.
So we have 5 minutes before we move to questions, and I want to make sure that we bring up the topic that is tough but really important, which is security. And security is what, and Rich, I'd actually love to hear you talk a little bit first about what your audience, our audience, is saying about their worries about home security, and then let's talk about how you guys are thinking about this.
So it is top of mind for probably 50% of the comments that we get on our reviews, I think. A lot of it is a little bit hysterical. I don't want to say unfounded, but they think they're going to be hacked from every possible direction, through their coffee maker, through whatever else. I don't know that the reality is.
Could you imagine? That would be terrible. Coffee just gets made and
And it's decaf.
Too weak, way too weak.
Yeah.
that'd be terrible.
Decaffeinated, weak, watery, pour it.
But God forbid. What I think is interesting, I'm not sure how, I'm not a security expert, so I'm not sure what the reality is of this concern, I guess. But one thing I think is, prompts me to ask, so IFT, you guys pull in all kinds of different services to all these smart devices. Does that create an entry point? Like if you link out to Facebook or Twitter or SMS or wherever else, does that create an entry point for someone to say, okay, if I can get through to Facebook, now I can get to your door lock. If I can get through to Twitter, now I can get to your thermostat, whatever.
I would say no more so than your phone does, if that makes sense, right? Your phone has access to all those things, gain access to your phone. So I think one of the things to recognize about security in any situation where there's kind of a new emerging technology is that, for better or for worse, value really leads security. You know, I think even if you look at the web or the smartphone, there were years and years where people were just figuring out, hey, how is this relevant to me? What you know, is this actually valuable? Should I search for things on the web, or should I get a smartphone? And I think that's definitely the phase we're in now. And it's kind of it's interesting now that we've kind of learned the hard way that if that value really kind of goes far above the security, and that becomes kind of this trailing, you know, far third or fourth concern, we get into some really tough spots. So I think it's important to note that I think in Internet of Things and smart home, we're still going to have to lead with value. Who cares if it's secure if it's not useful? And then recognize that as we've nailed that down, security can't be something that falls behind. We have to identify the patterns, you know, patterns that we're all familiar with on the web right now that say, hey, don't have a weak password. If it's 123 ABC, we don't allow that. What are those same patterns and those same things that we have to identify for the smart home, for these connected devices? And let's make sure those aren't 3 or 4 years after we figured out the value piece.
Absolutely. And sort of a writer question to that, how much do you all think that biometrics in general are going to help with this problem, or at least with convincing consumers that they can trust the products that are making their lives easier?
It might convince them.
It helps. Yeah. I mean, it helps. You know, it's like the endpoint. I mean, what's great is one size doesn't fit all. You have to, you know, so I totally agree. Lyndon's comments are really great. I mean, there's more benefits. Like, you're much more likely to have your door kicked in than like the hacker is going to get in through that way. And it's much better to be connected generally. But security is like a DNA level philosophy that has to be built in, not as a feature,
Yes.
but into the entire stack end to end. And then the third is, you know, it's not one size fits all. If you're super freaked out about a lock, don't buy one. Like, it's not like it's going to grow into your door on its own, right? So if you see the benefit and the value of that connected, controllable thing, then add one. And if you don't, nobody's pushing it on you. You don't have to. Don't be a hater, right? You know, you don't have to have one. Mm-hmm. Somebody likes it. That's good for them. And same is going to be for like biometrics and beacons. And maybe some people do want to take it out of their pocket and hit the code before they go in the door, and they don't want the totally automated things, but some people will love the magic, you know, and so on. And I think that things like biometrics will just add that little flavor of extra, you know.
Magic. We're back to magic.
Exactly. But at top to bottom, I mean, that's the sort of general stance we have. So.
Ben, you like magic?
I do. I mean, Wink was born out of a partnership with GE, and you know, they have lots of connected things. Most of the connected things they have are jet engines and gas turbines and electrical power plants. You can imagine that they take security on their connected devices pretty seriously, because if you hack into a gas turbine, it's maybe a little bit worse than if you hacked into a coffee maker. So they put us through the same process, though. So they have what they call the red team, which is exactly what it sounds like. It's a team of people, ex-Mossad guys in Israel that literally try to penetrate everything with the GE logo on it. And it's funny hanging out in the Wink office, because at any given moment you can be like, it's happening! And like, they all, like, GE starts doing their thing to see if we're on our game. And that's one of my favorite things about Wink, is how seriously they have to take security, because of, you know, the fact that our partners are some of the larger industrial companies that take this stuff seriously. So I generally agree with Alex and Lyndon, though, like, the product has to do something first, but it is good to know and be able to tell consumers, like, this is, you know, this is put through the same security rigor as the 747 you're going to fly to, you know, God knows where.
We have to get this right. All right? That we are literally at a crossroads with regards to the you know, really getting to that hockey stick in terms of Internet of Things and smart devices. And of all of the topics that we've talked about, I think this absolutely is key. And obviously, yes, ADT is extremely concerned about security. That's who we are. That's what we do. That's what our brand has stood for 140 years, right? And so when we look at automations, we also are looking at how do we, we talked earlier about how we utilize these devices and all these new inventions that these guys represent to make people secure. But how do we therefore then secure our own systems, right? How do we secure at the edge? And that's something to what Alex said, has to begin at the beginning. It's security by design into the products, right? At the enterprise level as well as at the edge device level, as well as at the consumer device level. And so I'm going back again to this, that as an industry, I really, really like the collegiality so far of what the Internet of Things has meant. And the people know each other. Even though they may compete on an honorable basis and during the day, at night they go out and they hit the bars together, right? And you do. And so the take on this, though, is that the collegiality of this industry means that we can and should address some of these issues up front right now. Like, the issue is not just about seamlessness in terms of interaction, but the issue is about security by design on this, right? And it does begin with best practices, right? It does begin with educating our own consumers, right, and our own potential customers about the things that they could do, as well as adapting best practices across competitors on what and how we actually are going to put together services and devices and platforms. We should do it as an industry preemptively before something from the outside, say from the regulatory side, decides to start looking at this whole big curve that's happening and saying, oh, maybe we ought to be looking at this ourselves. Right?
So the good news here is there's, I think, quite a bit of background philosophical alignment, because it could be an existential threat to like all the products and things in this space, and it's being treated really seriously behind the scenes, like weekly penetration testing and stuff like that. And there's risks with every new technology wave, but there's a lot of really awesome benefits for this stuff as well.
So I would love to give the audience a chance to ask some questions. We have about 10 minutes. We have mics on both sides of the room. So I'm going to ask you to get up and go to one of the mics, and then we'll call on you and then go from there. Go ahead. You're up first.
Hello, thank you for this panel. It's awesome. What are the challenges that you see facing widespread smart home adoption?
What's your name and what company are you with, by the way, just out of curiosity?
I'm an independent analyst. I'm Josh.
Okay.
All right. Who wants to take that one? Biggest challenge.
I think education and price.
Yeah.
Yep.
I would agree with Ben.
Totally.
So education, I think, is huge, and I still think that, and price is, it's more about value, right? So I think we sell expensive thermostats, and people think there's value.
You banging on Nest too?
No, I think
Jesus, everyone's on that Nest train.
I think people like the design. Yeah.
Price to value, but
Yeah, there's price to value there. So I think that both of those things. But if the value isn't there, then there's lots of the same products that we're seeing. Everyone has a smart plug, and there's tons of bulbs, and and so when you're seeing lots of new sensors, and why would you put certain sensors in something, right? It has to really add value to a customer, and don't just add new sensors into every product because it doesn't make sense for a customer to have, right? They should actually really have value, because that just drives the price up, and there's no value. So that's kind of that's my perspective.
I would add on to that. It's not just value versus price. It's kind of like value versus barrier. And that barrier could be price, it could be ease of use, compatibility with other devices.
Yep.
Yeah.
right on.
Does it work
Yeah.
over time, and will I buy a second one from that same company? So I kind of lump that in with the word barrier.
Yeah, so all of those things, and then get to this openness, I think, is a fundamental barrier too. That's going to come out. There's certain things like, if you wanted more meat on that potato, there's things like the underlying radio standards, which we all don't want to put in front of consumers because we don't want it to be a barrier. But the reality is Zigbee and Z-Wave and Insteon and all these different things. And as there are commitments to an open model, and as there's enough volume, we'll have millions of households, right, et cetera, then we think we can drive, not for narrowing, but drive to a consolidated set of open standards and the underlying technology, which will bring down the price, which will make confidence go up, which will make security easier to hammer, which will make pairing for quick ease of use better. And so there's underlying distinctions that we're all up here thinking in the
Let's do
background
it.
when we say it.
We should do it.
We're
Let's
doing
do
it.
it.
We're definitely doing it.
All
But anyway, hope that helps.
Great. Thank you. How about you, sir?
Yeah, hi, Ron Weber with TE. One of the areas that you've been focusing on from a security standpoint is the hardware security, the access security. There's a whole other element of security concerning the data.
Yep.
If you read some of the user agreements, you're basically giving them the rights to your firstborn. from a data standpoint? I mean, I can envision this being exploited where, they look at your home.
You banging on Nest too?
Yeah. So I guess I'm
At
curious.
least you admitted it.
Curious what your comments are about the data security.
I think it's like, it's like a first principle for me as a side note is like, I think just like security has to be right up there in the priority list, not right below value, right? Never fall too far behind. I think that you have to have a philosophy. It's not like a feature that you think about later, but on first principles for data ownership and privacy. So for us, it's like the consumer owns their data, period, right? And then you can begin to draw distinctions out from those first principles, and then you have to build that into the architecture. You have to build that into the types of partnerships you're willing to form, which devices you certify and allow to be in your app and so on. But I think that, if there's going to be the creepy examples that like go too far, and hopefully the market will just weed those out. And I know that others share this sort of first principle view now, and it's as important as security on all these things.
Yeah. I think for a lot of hardware companies, they're real hardware companies, and they don't particularly care about your data. And I ultimately think that they care about the security data, but they don't care about owning it and exploiting it. And I think ultimately those are the products that are going to win, because I think there's a creep factor that's going to come into play in a really big way.
Yeah, I think it's absolutely critical when we think about providing security for people too, right? It isn't just about providing security for a premise, which has really been what the traditional security attack, and even the new entrants into security or our competitors are still thinking about the premise. In order to be completely protected, you have to think about your digital world, right? And you also have to think about what level of protection will I have, can I maintain it when I actually walk outside of this house, right? When I'm in a car, when I'm halfway around the world, et cetera, right? And that begins, I think, with what Alex said, which is, what is your initial principle around the data side? We completely agree. The consumer, the customer owns their data, not just their static data, like your social security number, but the dynamic data that you generate literally on a second-by-second basis.
Yeah,
right?
where you're located.
And that should be something that you should have the right to know what it is, when and how it's being generated, have the right to be able to then manage it and protect it, right? And if you can't do that yourself, you should have the ability to find advocates who could do that for you.
Great.
That's from an ADT perspective, that's our position on the data side.
So we have time for one or maybe two more questions. Let's go with you.
Hi, I'm Paulo from Linux, and I know you guys are mostly focused in the US market, but I would love to hear if you guys have any views on other kinds of markets, especially emerging countries for smart home and connected devices in general.
Great question.
Samsung, speaking for Samsung, they've got some presence outside of the US market, and we definitely see it as universal human needs in some of these things. I mean, we didn't get to the societal impacts. I mean, what's really exciting about this stuff is it works for an individual household that brings you benefits, but it also has this magnifying effect as enough of us adopt energy-saving technologies or security technologies or peace of mind related stuff that drops insurance costs and so on. But we really do see it as a worldwide phenomenon, and I think it's just the US is the lead market, but there is, like, behind the scenes, there's obviously a race brewing to, like, make sure that this gets all around the world. So,
Yeah. Yes. Agreed.
Any more questions? Go ahead.
My name's Laura, and I'm a writer for the residential construction and building products industry, and I'm curious to know how your companies are, or the industry in general, are approaching the issue of obsolescence and that concern for homeowners, and how, whether it's, I'm going to wait until the next best thing comes out because every year there's a CES and awesome things come out, or shoot, I bought this thing and now the company that made it is gone, or there's no support for it anymore. How do you
Can I
approach that?
take this one?
Absolutely.
I think you have the exact opposite thing in this category. I think that things are going to last longer because we could make your products better from our office in New York or his office in San Francisco. I mean, a light bulb used to last whatever, 6 months to a year. Now a light bulb's going to last 22 years, and every single week I'm going to push out an update that's going to make that light bulb even better.
Yeah.
And yes, you're going to have interfaces and new screens that you can put in your houses and things like this, and every year things will change, but that's no different. I think you're going to have more benefit to connectivity in this category, and I think you're going to have a reduction of obsolescence because the focus is going to be on the software, and the software can be pushed in the cloud.
I'd agree with that. I think we try to keep it pretty simple at the endpoint. So getting into the camera example, it's like if you get too cute, then that thing is going to be like obsolete much more quickly. Like you look at the screens on your old devices and they look like antiques, right? And so if you can build the intelligence outside of the device, keep the interface really simple, like a light switch should be a light switch and it should work indefinitely. A light bulb should produce really high quality light and last a really long time, and then the intelligence can come from elsewhere. Those are the products with resiliency that won't be annoying in a few years' time, right? They'll last and keep getting better.
I think you're going to have a weird thing happen with these things where if a light bulb lasts 22 years, chances are you're going to get sick of the decor and that light fixture way earlier than you're going to get sick of the actual lamp itself, the bulb itself. So it's going to become, as you said earlier, much more of a decor game because these things are going to last longer and longer, and they're not going to feel obsolete because they change so often.
Yeah.
Great. That's all the time that we have. I think this was a really, really interesting and fantastic panel, and I want to thank every one of you for coming to do this and for being so open and great.
This was
Thank
fun.
you.
Thanks. This was really fun.
Thank you.